Hello, hello. This is the my artifact episode number 3740. Today's date is 3rd of December 2025. It's been almost like a night at 10:10 p.m. Okay, 10:10 p.m. means like that 10:11. Now it's 11 p.m. Alright, yeah. So today I'm not gonna ask question to myself. Today I'm gonna kind of like asking such a question that something very different. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to analyze the people around me, situation around me, surrounding around me, and try to understand why these are kind of like exist. Okay, yeah. Let's just take a kind of like a simple thing. Okay, yeah, let's just understand. Let's take a kind of like a simple perspective. Okay, try to be a comparison. I don't know how what exactly is this thing, what I'm trying to tell you, but I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm just trying. Okay, just hear me out. Okay, so I'm analyzing my sister watching kind of like a somebody television show. Okay, yeah. No, I am not kind of like a somebody looking at what she was kind of like a watching every single time. But the way that I notice, like example is this thing, while she was eating a lunch, she usually watch Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma. Okay, Tarak Mehta Ulta Chashma is a television, by the way. It's a show. Okay, it's a kind of like a fun humor and things like that. Okay, uh, when like a basically is when no one when kind of like a with the family, when no one is watching, then probably she is actually watching Shinchan all the time. Okay, uh okay. Also, her age is somewhat something, uh 27, probably 27 or 28, yeah. And she is kind of like somebody watching Shinchan. Sometimes she watched Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma. Okay, yeah. And there is a couple of kind of like only Marathi TV channels that she watched. She and also my mother was too. The serial name is I don't know, something. I'm not. I forgot the name. It's like something that Marathi TV. Okay, yeah. I am trying to understand that can we able to judge a people according to the what people they watch. Okay, what people they watch and what kind of like their interest and things like that. Can we able to do this thing? And the answer is yes. Yeah, it's not that probably this isn't judge. It's kind of like somebody this thing, a kind of like a common parameter that we get, okay, from our finding. It's not exactly right, but somewhat something right. Okay, yeah. Now let's take a kind of like a something simple example. Okay, from my point of perspective, from my experience, I don't like watching cartoon. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing, I like watching cartoon when I was little or things like that. But at this moment, my age is almost like a 32, and I am like not want to watch cartoon. If it is animated movie, let's just say Pixar animated movie like a Toy Story or kind of like Angry Birds or things or that and that, I love to watch. Okay, yeah. But a cartoon, it's not really that ki I hate, but it's not really that ki I love either too. Okay, yeah. Also, let me tell you one thing. When I was a teenager or when I was kind of like a child, I was watching kind of like a lot of cartoon. Okay, yeah. At that time we don't really have a kind of like a cable TV and things like that, but usually whatever the cartoon that we actually kind of like a get, like a basically every summer my father kind of like a put the cable on the TV. So in that particular period of time, we actually kind of like watch a lot of cartoon. And some of the cartoon that I love to watch, Ben 10 is one of them. Okay, yeah. Ben 10 is really good. Okay, yeah. Then Avatar, The Last Airbender. But I'm not counting as a kind of like something Avatar as a cartoon. Okay, Avatar as a last Airbender. I'm not counting as a cartoon because it's a kind of like complete storyline. Okay, it's a kind of like a things that na I'm hooked up this web series by kind of like a only way that it kind of like a present the storyline and things and that and that. Ben 10 is not that kind of like a storyline. It's a kind of like a somebody show that every chapter kind of like a somebody brings new and things and that and that. I love to watch that thing. But if I kind of like a say that should I watch again Ben 10 or Avatar the Last Airbender, will I able to watch this thing? Well, no, I am not wanting to watch those kind of like a somebody cartoon show. Why? Because of that ki I don't know, because I already watch those things. But one thing is that ki I don't want to watch cartoon that much. Okay, I kind of like a similarly experience this thing. There is a kind of like a something the anime that I wanted to watch. Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen is a kind of like a somebody animated anime Japanese cartoon, by the way. It's a Japanese cartoon anime. Okay, yeah. I heard about this anime so much that this is kind of like a really good, the storyline is really good and this and that and that, and I can usually kind of like a somebody watch this kind of like a somebody show on Hotstar. I already have Hotstar for free. I could able to watch this thing, but since I like basically a couple of days ago I was kind of like started watching this thing, I am not able to watch, or I'm not kind of like some this thing that ki like I'm understanding the story and arc and things like that, but still it's feel like that ki like I don't really get anything. Okay, let me give you perspective. Right now the content that I'm watching, I am kind of like a somebody watching such a content that kind of like a somebody kind of like a something kind of like a give me little bit value regarding about something. Couple of days ago I was kind of like watching a kind of like a South Korean drama named Soundtrack. It's also available in Disney Plus Hotstar. I was kind of like watching, and while I was kind of like watching that particular show, I was kind of like getting value regarding about the love. Romantic. Another thing is that it kind of like gives me cultural differences about, like basically I'm Indian and the show is actually represent kind of like a South Korea and things like that. So basically the web series is kind of like a represent that society, and when I kind of like understand this thing, I just connect with their society. I just connect with the South Korean society. What does people think and stuff like that, like think or do or stuff like that. Like basically is this thing, the dinner table over there is not kind of like a meant to be kind of like a dinner table. They have in dinner table they kind of like a sit, like legitly they sit on the floor and there is a kind of like a table which is somewhat something very different. Another thing, the way that they bow is like basically the way that they thanks to someone else. Another thing is that the like basically is this thing, I try to compare the shows, US shows and kind of like some South Korean dramas and US dramas. So in the US teenage dramas, the teenager kind of like a kiss each other very normally and very like a very passionately. Sometimes they had a sex too. But in a South Korean drama, they didn't. They didn't means like that ki, like basically for them kiss is kind of like a somebody far more bigger thing, which kind of like a represent that society that US kind of like a somebody really good at PDA, means public display affection. Like they don't really kind of like a somebody like they don't really kind of like a scared or kind of like they don't really feel that he kind of like somebody uncomfortable while kiss somebody. But in US, but in South Korea, they are literally uncomfortable to kiss somebody without having any kind of like somebody the consent or things or that. It's, I'm not gonna say that thing the people who kind of like basically like the usually people kiss in US are way lesser than people kiss in South Korea. I'm trying to, okay, yeah. And India is kind of like a somewhat something in between, okay, yeah. Because in India people are kiss, but people have kind of like a some sort of constraint too, okay, yeah, whatever. But I kind of like watching those particular South Korean drama, and which kind of like give me this kind of like some values regarding about, first of all, romantic. Okay, another thing is that ki it kind of like represent that society, and which is somewhat something very different. Okay, yeah, and which fell little bit something interesting to watch. Okay, yeah. Now I'm trying to analyze myself regarding about what kind of like a content that I'm watching, and how is my thought process, and what is at least this thing. Okay, so usually is this thing when I had a lunch, my sister usually play this show called Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma on television. Okay, now basically is this thing, we usually do a lunch at the living room, and the TV is actually at the living room. So basically everyone kind of like watching something. So my sister kind of like switch the channel to the Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma, which is really comfortable, humor, and kind of like somebody feels really good. Do I like watching that particular show? No, I don't. Why? Because I don't really think that I'm getting any kind of like value from that particular show. Somewhat something humor, but I'm not really that much kind of like a funny guy, or I'm not really that much kind of like somebody that ki kind of like a smile and things and that. Like at some certain years, like basically couple of years ago, I was kind of like simply watch Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma show, which kind of like a little bit funny and things and that and that. But in today's point of perspective, I am not really loving that particular show, not because of the kind of like somebody the actor and actress and things are they kind of like a change and stuff like that. No, but it's because of that ki the humor that I'm getting from that particular show is not really that much kind of like a giving me a kind of like a some value. It doesn't really feel that ki I should supposed to be spend like a 10-15 minute to kind of like watch that particular show to get any kind of like a value. No, it's not. Okay, yeah. And humor is like basically this thing, I love humor, I love watching kind of like a funny videos and things like that. I love kind of like a stand-up comedy, but I love stand-up comedy, which kind of like give me little bit of kind of like funny and humor and things like that. But it's just like that ki Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma is kind of like something giving me a humor which is like pansat. Okay, what's a pansat? A pansat means like that ki like I don't know how do I supposed to explain this stuff. Okay, yeah. But the stand-up comedy is a kind of like a somewhat something really good humor, like a Zakir Khan. Okay, really the way that he explained Abhishek Upmanyu, the way that I watch the stand-up comedy, and I really love it. Okay, yeah. But it's not the kind of like a things that I usually kind of like a watch content regarding about the value that I'm getting. Like mostly I'm kind of like watching such a content that I'm kind of like getting something value. But I try to analyze myself regarding about the content that I was kind of like watching couple of years ago and content that I'm watching today. Why is actually happened? What exactly is this thing? What kind of like a transformation that you are feeling inside of it? I don't know why, but like basically since 2025, okay, this year, there is something shifting is actually happening inside of me. I am kind of like a somebody bit more focused on kind of like what kind of like a value that I'm getting and things like that. Another thing is that I'm trying to understanding the people around me. Okay, yeah, and try to analyze them regarding about what they kind of like watch and what kind of like somebody show that they watch and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. And like basically this thing, I'm kind of like judging them, but it's not kind of like judging them. It's a kind of like a things that what is how their thought process and things like that. Okay, one of my friend who is kind of like somebody watching lot of reels, so much reels. No, I didn't really see him. He was kind of like watching reels, but the way that he was kind of like somebody sending me reels on my Instagram messaging app, I didn't really open that stuff. but he was kind of like spending so much amount of time on watching reels. Okay, yeah. And because of he was kind of, and I also understand what kind of like a reels he was watching. He was kind of like a watching reels regarding about memes and stuff and funny and stuff like that. Now there is no wrong in this particular context, but there is a couple of things that I noticed. He became a little bit impulsive. Impulsive means like that he expresses emotion very quickly, very vividly. Like when he get angry, he express angry. When he get mellow, he express mellow. Like every expression kind of like a represent very fastly. Okay, yeah. Also, he gets anger very quickly too. Okay, yeah. Another thing is that because of he was kind of like a watching kind of like a memes and some sort of naughty memes and things like that, he kind of like a talk about something really naughty stuff. Okay, yeah. Naughty stuff means like that a kind of like a sex naughty stuff and stuff like that, which is something that I don't really resonate that much. Why? Because of that I didn't really watch that many vertical content, I didn't really watch that many reel, so I'm not really associating with that particular stuff. Okay, yeah. I kind of like feel that he was kind of like spending a lot of time on watching reels, and because of this thing he's like a basically instant gratification is kind of like he was kind of like a focus on instant gratification. He cannot able to watch a kind of like a video. Like basically is this thing, couple of days ago I was kind of like somebody sent a video regarding about the Leonardo, what he kind of like do the dissection and things, and that I sent that video. He didn't really watch the video. Okay, yeah. He was kind of like a really curated regarding about the way that I explain, but for a time I kind of like sent that video, but he didn't really watch the video. Yeah, definitely he didn't really watch the video. Another thing is that I also give them a lot of kind of like some recommendation regarding about the AI classes. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing Vaibhav Sisinthi is a AI kind of like a something generalist, and he was kind of like a teaching about the AI new tools and things and that. By the way, this class is kind of like a free for everybody. You just kind of like somebody register yourself on this outlook.com, and you will kind of like get the schedule, and you will kind of like get into the class. There is a kind of like a weekend class for 2 days. Okay, yeah. And this class is for 8 hours, like basically 8 hours, that means 16 hour of class, and in this 16 hour they kind of like tell us regarding about everything. Now I took this class, I took this course, and it kind of like adds so much value inside of me. I kind of like know more about AI and what kind of like some stuff I could do with that thing. Okay, I also kind of like know that this kind of like really helpful for my friend too, because he is also in kind of like somewhat something trying to do a study and things and that. So I kind of like give them that you should supposed to be do this course. It's a kind of like a weekend course and things like that, but he didn't really took that course. He kind of like straight up says this thing that we shouldn't supposed to be use AI and things and that. I was like, whatever. Okay, like basically this thing, you cannot force somebody to kind of like teach and things and that. If those particular person who's kind of like somebody wanted to improve his skills and stuff, he could do this thing, because we are living in this real world where free advice doesn't really have any values. Okay, so if you are giving any kind of like some free advice to someone, don't give them, because people might not gonna listen to them. Okay, yeah. Whatever. But I realize like basically I kind of like a lot of realization has actually happened. Okay, so basically my friend is kind of like somebody watching a lot of reels and things like that. I kind of like seen those changes inside of them. Okay, another thing is that I also compare myself with other people too. Okay, also is this thing that one of my friend who's kind of like a talk on the phone a lot. Okay, talking on the phone a lot, and I didn't really talk that much phone in a lot, like nothing really at all. Like basically is this thing, my calls to somebody just kind of like a less than a minute mostly, yeah, and that's it. I didn't really talk that much long, but people love to talk to the others and things and that. But So what is exactly wrong thing? Like, is it something that wrong thing to kind of like a talk to somebody? No, nothing wrong thing. It's a kind of like a things that na ki usually I get some sort of amount of value when I talk to myself, like recording this artifact. I'm kind of like getting values. My friend is actually getting the similar kind of like value when he also kind of like a talk to his friends and things and that. So basically everything is kind of like a different and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. There is also, I wanted to talk about kind of like a assembly Marathi TV channel. Okay, I am belong to the Maharashtra. I'm belong to the India, by the way. Maharashtra is a state. Okay, yeah. Like there are multiple states in India, and each state have kind of like a different religious language. Marathi, like basically I'm from Marathi, Gujarati, Tamil Nadu, Kannada, Bengali, Hindi. Okay, yeah. These are kind of like a somewhat something regional language. Okay, yeah. These regional language have kind of like a assembly cater different kind of like a different kind of like audience. Those audience represent their culture and things like that. Okay, yeah. Now because of this thing, they kind of like assembly make such a show which kind of like a resonate with those audience. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly it means? Okay, okay. So basically it's just saying that if I make a video regarding about kind of like assembly, let's just say tutorial about the Photoshop. Okay, yeah. So who do you think who will gonna watch that particular tutorial? Obviously the people who are wanted to kind of like learn about the Photoshop and things like that, those people will gonna watch my tutorial, right? Any random people will not gonna watch, even if how good the editing and how the way that I'm kind of like explain this thing, it will not gonna work out. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing that people are kind of like assembly consume such a content that they resonate most. Okay, yeah. If the people who kind of like assembly give them Photoshop content, but people don't really connect with that thing, people don't really watch that stuff. Okay, yeah. Now same thing happened with the television too. Television shows. The television shows are kind of like it's only made for audience. Okay, yeah. Like basically it's this thing, they know that their audience are kind of like somebody come from the rural area and things like that. So basically they kind of like set the entire show according to the kind of like a rural area. Like basically their audience are most of the from rural area. So basically their stories, their character arc and their storyline are kind of like a mostly represent to the village and things like that, because the audience are actually from that. As also they are the language and way that they kind of like somebody talk and stuff like that, which also kind of like a represent ruler and things like that. Okay, so what exactly is this thing? Is it something really wrong in that? No, there is nothing. Okay, there is nothing really wrong in this thing. Okay, I'm trying to kind of like understanding the concept regarding about why does people watch those particular contexts and things like that. Let me give you the perspective. Okay, a couple of days ago I went my relatives home, my Atya. Okay, yeah. And in Atya's home they are actually watching Big Boss. Okay, Big Boss is also kind of like a show, but we didn't really watch the Big Boss. Why? Is because of that he usually is this thing, I usually mostly consume content through mobile phone mostly. Same as goes with my sister too. Okay, yeah. Usually television are mostly for my parents, and yeah, and usually my parents are actually consume such a content, original content. Okay, or religious content. Sorry, regional content. Original content means regional language content. Like basically my father, if the father wanted to watch a news, they would kind of like a switch to the Marathi news. Okay, yeah. If my mother wanted to kind of like watch any kind of like my mother didn't really watch that many television, but if she wanted to kind of like watch some sort of television, she usually preferred to be watch Marathi shows, and that's it. Okay, yeah. My father didn't really switch to the Hindi, as well as my mother didn't really switch to the Hindi as well. Okay, yeah. And this is what kind of like some difference. Okay, yeah. But if I went to my Atya's place, Atya actually watch kind of like assembly most of the content in Hindi. Okay, yeah, mostly. They don't really watch that much regional language. By the way, my Atya, which I don't know what, like my kind of like a family relatives are also kind of like a something are from the Maharashtra. They also can speak Marathi too, but they didn't really prefer to watch Marathi television. They usually prefer to watch Hindi television. Okay, yeah. And this is what kind of like something very different. Okay, yeah. Different means what? A difference means different thought process, different set of living standard, and different state of kind of like a something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to explain. I'm not really sure what is at least this thing. Um, when I kind of like somebody, when no one is actually watching, if I have a remote, then I would kind of like switch to the movie. Okay, yeah. Sony picks usually. Why? Because of it's a very simple thing, 222. Okay, yeah, triple two, and the channel is on. Okay, yeah. And and usually I kind of like a watch in kind of like a very less volume. Okay, yeah, I don't watch that much less like usually is this thing ki movies are kind of like a somebody expressed in two different way. As a filmmaker, you have to be kind of like a somebody watch movie in mute. Okay, yeah, because when you watch movies in mute, you actually understand the lighting, you actually understand the character, you actually understand the expressions and things that like basically turn on the subtitle, you will understand more. But probably is this thing that na ki as a filmmaker, you already watched the video, then watch this entire video in mute, then you would kind of like understand the movie in much more better way, like basically the composition and camera and things like that. And this is what exactly I would do, like basically when I kind of like somebody no one is actually watching, I kind of like took the remote and kind of like a play Sony picks. There is a kind of like a Hollywood movie which is actually kind of like, and I also kind of like have very less volume, maybe one or two. Okay, and I kind of like look at the scene and things, and I admire all the stuff. Okay, yeah. Now because of kind of like I'm watching kind of like somebody somewhat something premium content or Hollywood movie, so I realized that key advertisement are also very different. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing in a Sony pics. Okay, yeah, the advertisement are mostly associated with the like basically higher standard audience, higher standard kind of like somebody brand development or higher, I don't know, but the advertisement are kind of like a little bit premium. Okay, yeah. They don't really kind of like somebody advertise regarding about the, like I don't know how do I supposed to explain the premium. Okay, yeah. Like let's just say Red Bull is somewhat something a premium product, and they advertise on that particular thing. Okay, yeah. But I don't really see in the premium, I don't really see in the Red Bull advertisement in Marathi TV channel. Like I rarely found it. Okay, yeah, Red Bull, nothing really at all. Then mostly is this thing Maggie. Okay, yeah, like Maggie, like Maggie product. Okay, you know Maggie na, like basically. So Maggie product are usually kind of like somebody seen on Marathi network. Okay, Marathi TV channel network. But I don't really see in the Marathi, I don't really see in that kind of like somebody Maggie product advertisement on Sony Pics. Like I might gonna see, but very rarely. Okay, I very rarely. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing now the regarding about the audience, kind of like somebody the advertisement is kind of like somebody cater very differently too. Okay, yeah. So basically, it's somewhat something understand that key if the people who are kind of like somebody willing to spend watching Hollywood movie, consider to be those people are kind of like somebody premium audience. Premium audience means what? A premium audience means like a like basically is this thing that keep probably how do I supposed to explain? A premium audience means not meant to be kind of like having more amount of money. No, a premium audience means like that keep it's very hard to explain. Okay, yeah, but in some certain context it might gonna resonate that having more money means like that those people are premium audience, but that is completely wrong. Okay, yeah, having more money is not represent the premium audience. It represent very differently. Like basically I seen a lot of people who has lot of amount of money, but they are kind of like somebody consumption of content is a very like a very lower and things like I'm not really how do I supposed to lower. It's something that it's a very not premium feels like that. Okay, yeah. So I don't know how do I supposed to kind of like assembly understand this thing, but still I kind of like a represent, I kind of like assembly figure, I don't know how do I supposed to explain. Okay, yeah, the people who kind of like watch those kind of like a Hollywood movie consider to be a premium audience, and that's why audience are actually catered by the kind of like a premium advertisement. Red Bull, then somewhat something like basically I don't know, but there are premium kind of like assembly. The advertisement are actually shown. Brew coffee, yeah, brew coffee, mostly brew coffee or kind of like assembly. These are kind of like assembly. The product are kind of like shown in the Hollywood movie advertisement. Okay, yeah, but also the same context but very different thing. Okay, yeah. Sony Picks, the Hollywood movie are kind of like a broadcast in India in English. Okay, yeah, in English. Okay, yeah. And the action movie is also kind of like a assembly channel which also kind of like a broadcast Hollywood movie but dub in Hindi. Okay, yeah, dub in Hindi means all the movie that you kind of like assembly seen on that action film are kind of like assembly dubbed in Hindi. Now the like basically if I'm gonna say, if the Harry Potter is actually shown on Sony Picks and the same Harry Potter movie is actually shown on this action movie, I found very different ad campaign. Okay, yeah, like let me explain. The brew coffee, the Red Bull are kind of like mostly showcase on the Sony Picks. Okay, yeah. Not exactly, but kind of like a somewhat something more. Okay, yeah. But if I'm gonna say action movie, then they kind of like represent a very different ad. Okay, yeah. Ujala advertisement. Okay, yeah. I might gonna see. Then basically is this thing that ki Horlicks. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing somewhat something domestic brand which kind of like assembly cater in action Hollywood movie which dub in Hindi. And the Sony Picks movie, they actually have a kind of like a cater English Hollywood movie. They kind of like a represent very higher kind of like assembly ad campaign like a Red Bull, brew coffee, or kind of like assembly the Sprite. Okay, yeah, or something that yeah, something little bit kind of like a premium. Okay, yeah. So it's a kind of like a thing that na ki I think that it's like I already knew this thing, but I kind of like assembly analyze this kind of like assembly behavioral pattern regarding about the content consumption and because of the content consumption, what kind of like content they watch and things like that. Okay, now basically in the television, as a kind of like a user doesn't really control that much. Okay, yeah, like basically as a user control the channel and what kind of like a channel that he wanted to watch and things like that. So it does not represent the user credibility and how much user is actually premium or things like that. Mostly it kind of like a represent through social media platform and YouTube specifically. Okay, now basically it's this thing that ki my sister have a YouTube, like she actually kind of like watch a kind of like educational video on YouTube platform. Okay, yeah. Educational video means what? Like basically it's this thing that ki UPSC kind of like assembly like a study IQ. Okay, study IQ kind of like assembly tell us regarding about multiple videos regarding about the UPSC syllabus. Okay, regarding about the UPSC syllabus, what kind of like a subject that they should supposed to be teach, and they would teach that particular subject, history, social science, geography, physics, and things like that. Okay, yeah. And my sister usually watch kind of like assembly video according to that particular context. Okay, yeah. Now basically this thing because of this UPSC context, they kind of like represent science to physics too. Okay, yeah. So I also share a video a kind of like a video regarding about the kind of like how the Einstein thinks and how the kind of like general relativity theory was actually kind of like established, and how does it kind of like assembly work and things like that. Okay, yeah, which is kind of like a somewhat something associate with her context. Okay, because my sister usually watch those particular video, watch those kind of like assembly the educational exam oriented kind of like assembly videos, but she didn't really watch this particular Albert Einstein video. Why she didn't really watch? Why is that? What is that this thing? I kind of like realize something very different context. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing she usually kind of like watch educational kind of like some lecture related content on YouTube platform for just for exam, not for kind of like some consumption of knowledge. Okay, let me kind of like understand this very different thing. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing in India, if the student who are kind of like doing a kind of like assembly exam preparation regarding about UPSC or any kind of like assembly civil services, they are kind of like watching a lot of kind of like exam oriented kind of like assembly classes or things like that. But and they are kind of like consuming those information, but they are only consuming information only for exam. That's it. And after the exam, they just don't want to watch. They don't want to watch. Like let's just kind of like somebody is this thing that key. I asked to my sister regarding about particular historical event. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing that key the global event, usually World War II and things like that. And she actually mentioned that she didn't really understand. She don't really take care of those global event like World War II and things like that. Why? Because in the civil exam, they don't really mention the global event. They kind of like cover up only the domestic event, like what exactly happened in the India and Indian history and things like that. And that's why she was kind of like try to understand. That's why she wanted to know and things like that. And that's it. Like what exactly is this thing? Like basically is this thing now the like okay, let me give you the civil exam are kind of like a meant for like a kind of like a found for such student who are kind of like somebody really enthusiastic regarding about histories and kind of like geopolitics and kind of like somebody understand, and the people who are kind of like somebody having more knowledge regarding about that particular person are kind of like credible enough to kind of like get that knowledge and get that job and things like that. But the student are kind of like getting this knowledge only for exam and that's it. And after the exam, they just became dumb. And I seen that thing. Like basically is this thing, one of my friend who is really good at kind of like some histories and kind of like some way that he thinks the is really good. Okay, yeah. But after he got a government exam, he just became so dumb. And I was like, what the fuck is this thing? He just always think about money, and he just wanted to kind of like thinks about money and things and that, and he doesn't really wanted to kind of like gain more about knowledge and things like that. Like basically this thing, before the exam he was kind of like a really expert. He will knows about the geopolitics, histories, science and things, because he was kind of like a study regarding all those stuff. But after he got his job, he doesn't really have any interest. Nothing really at all. Like basically couple of months ago, I was kind of like sharing a video regarding about the kind of like AI enhancement and probably kind of like something is this thing. He doesn't really watch that particular video. Like basically he doesn't really watch, means like that he just says that why do I supposed to watch this video? He just straight up says that like I don't really have a time, or I don't know, something he kind of like give me kind of like some negative response that he doesn't really want it to watch. And same that guy was almost like a couple of years ago, he was kind of like really excited and enthusiastic regarding about knowing the stuff and history events and things and kind of like somebody. But the way that transformation happened is very vague, very wrong. Like basically is this thing, the exams are meant to be designed for kind of like a hiring or getting such a student they are capable enough to having those knowledge regarding about history, science and stuff like that. But the student who are kind of like willing to know about those stuff only for exam and that's it, and they became dumb after that. Yeah, legitly dumb. And I was like, what the fuck is this thing, dude? Yeah, legitimately, what is this thing? And this is somewhat something I also understand that like basically is this thing, why we have an exam, like basically why UPSC is a kind of like a very hard exam in entire world. Why we have this exam? because we wanted to kind of like assembly want a kind of like assembly credible person who would kind of like assembly who would kind of like assembly understand how our country works and things, and kind of like a take us such a kind of like assembly country to the right position, things like that. So we need a kind of like assembly really credible person who would kind of like knows regarding about the all those skills and stuff like that, like a knowledge and histories and things and that. That's why this exam is kind of like a so tough and things like that. But if the student who are kind of like a willing to know regarding about only for cracking the exam and that's it, then what's exactly the point of this knowledge and things like that? Because I seen a lot of people who are kind of like a, became class 1 officer, UPSC officer and things like that, but then after that they became so dumb that they just like, I don't know what exactly. And we have belong to the India, and we have kind of like a lot of kind of like some example that ki IAS officer are kind of like doing very dumb decision and stuff like that. It's like, then what exactly that exam is actually catering? Okay, yeah, like that exam is meant to be kind of like a filter out such a student that kind of like is meant to be do something, add something value to the society and things like that. But they are only doing this for just a job and things like that. And that's why this kind of like a thing is that because of this context, because of this thing, this UPSCs became kind of like assembly the something the kind of like assembly a cultural thing that ki we just have to crack the exam and things like that. Like basically is this thing na ki if I'm gonna ask to the people who are kind of like doing a kind of like some UPSC exam, I'm gonna mention that ki what you will gonna do after you crack the UPSC exam. He doesn't really have any kind of like clues that what he gonna do. He just wanted to kind of like crack the UPSC exam and that's it, because his life is became safe after that. Like basically he will kind of have government job, government salary, accommodation and things and that. He was only talk about this thing. He will get the government quarter, he will get lot of money and things and that, but he will not gonna talk about that what kind of like value that he will gonna provide to the society. He doesn't really know what kind of like value. He just only focus on kind of like studies and exams, and he just only focus on kind of like getting the good life from that particular context, and that's it. And which is kind of like a things that, and dude, what is actually is this thing? What is actually purpose of that you are kind of like a hiring? Like it's not okay. So basically is this thing, I kind of like found a lot of kind of like loopholes in the society regarding about this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong, and somewhat something I kind of feel a little bit frustrated, but also I'm trying to understanding the world, because it's just like that. It's not a kind of like only one person fault. It's not kind of like only the society or system fault. It's a kind of like a things that it just kind of like every action comes with the consequences, and that consequences is kind of like a leads to kind of like a very different society thought process and things and that. Okay, so yeah, probably okay, yeah, but still I'm kind of like analyzing and what could be kind of, and also I'm kind of like getting those so many solutions regarding about that. Like what if I could do this thing, what if I could kind of like change this particular context, then what would be. I'm kind of like creating a simulation inside of my mind that how is exactly happened if I could do this thing, if I kind of like something change UPSC exam, not to kind of like conduct the exam, but kind of like assembly. Okay, let me give you the perspective. Okay, what is exactly my solution? Okay, so basically is this thing, UPSC exam is a kind of like assembly meant to be kind of like assembly meant to be kind of like assembly classified or kind of like filter it out, or kind of like such a candidate we are kind of like really good at in some sort of skill, like knowledge, history, social science, economy and things and that. Okay, and basically is this thing, those skills are kind of like a only way that find out by the exam. Okay, so basically one exam can determine the everything regarding about that particular person who's kind of like credible enough or not. But this is kind of like completely wrong thing, because it does not kind of like simply represent, like one exam does not represent that how much person is doing consistency. Okay, let me give you the perspective. The person is good or not, or person is doing hard work or not, does not represent by the exam. Okay, because exam is only meant to be happen once and that's it. Okay, but consistency does not represent by this thing. Hard work does not represent by the exam, nothing really at all. So what if we could kind of like somebody do this, not the exam, but kind of like a consistent way to do exam. Like example is this thing, UPSC exam is not meant to be a UPSC exam, it's meant to be UPSC course. Okay, let's just say course means like the UPSC kind of like somebody course. Let's just say a 5-year course. Okay, And like after you do the graduation, you have to if you wanted to kind of like simply serve a kind of like a civil services, then you just have to kind of like enroll to a UPSC course. Okay, this UPSC course or kind of like a post graduation degree. Okay, let's just say post graduation degree, which is kind of like a 5 year of degree. Okay, now is this thing like a basically is this thing this kind of like a simply course doesn't really have a kind of like a simply exam. Okay, but it kind of like a simply the credibility of the candidate is kind of like a determined by the everyday effort that particular person doing it. That example is this thing that a kind of like I would design a particular application where kind of like a people who kind of like a simply give them answer regarding about every single day. Okay, let's just say it's a kind of like a simply particular school where people would kind of like a simply getting a lecture and things like that, and they have to kind of like solve the kind of like exam and solve the kind of like ocean in this kind of like application and things like that. Okay, and every single day, and because of every single day people are kind of like doing it, that they have kind of like a chart that key which student is kind of like doing well or not. Okay, so when this thing happened, we would understand that key student are kind of like somebody doing hard work, also students are doing consistency, and regarding about the question that they solve, we kind of like understand that how much they have credibility, that what kind of like somebody the information that they are gathering and stuff like that. Also is this thing, it's not meant to be kind of like somebody a syllabus, but it's meant to be kind of like somebody finding what's actually existing. Example is this thing that key when you have a kind of like somebody particular book for particular exam or things like that, then student usually kind of like carry that book and that's it, and they don't really kind of like simply focus on another studies, which is not really good thing. Okay, I want that key, like let's just say the student who are wanted to kind of like simply understand particular context, let's just say World War I or World War II, then probably they would go to the internet, watch bunch of videos and things, and kind of like have little bit interest regarding about that. Okay, and basically the question that they ask in my application are completely irrelevant. Okay, like irrelevant to the World War II, but kind of like irrelevant to the what kind of like a context and things we're gonna get. So basically is this thing that the student should supposed to be listen very carefully, understand every words regarding about what exactly World War I actually happened, and when the question is actually arrive in the application, every day that particular person should supposed to kind of like give the answer, and that particular person have to give the answer which is right, which is wrong, and things like that. And when this actually happened, let's just say because of this chart program, we will kind of like identify which person is actually credible enough. Okay, one thing, which person is really hard work is kind of like a depend on the consistency, and which person is also consistency, which person is kind of like a doing it every single day, kind of like a came and kind of like a perform and that particular things. And when this thing happened, when the 3 year or 4 year of this particular diploma, this particular post graduation things, we will kind of like found such a candidate which is kind of like far more better in kind of like simply knowledge, but as well as hard work, consistency, and regarding about the how he will kind of like simply understand. Like basically I would just kind of like tell them a rough sketch work, but probably when it kind of like implement through kind of like a lot of ways. Like we would kind of like simply study about the kind of like a local environment, how it kind of like simply impact economy and things and that. So if this thing would gonna happen, it would be really good. Okay, like basically people might not gonna die because of the failure of the exam, because there is no exam at all. Okay, you just have to prove every single day regarding about how good is you are and how much knowledge that you have and things like that, which kind of like a represent, and it doesn't really have kind of like a things that you fail and things like that. You will kind of like get little less score, no worry at all. You just have to another day, you kind of like another day you have kind of like a work, kind of like understand, ask the question right, understand the knowledge and things and stuff like that, and you have to do it every single day. Like basically this thing every single day, student have a kind of like a choice that they would kind of like do something really much more better. It's not meant to be kind of like one exam kind of like dictate everything. No. So basically because of this thing, student will not really gonna get frustrated, and they would actually focus on growth, not meant to be kind of like cracking the exam, but they are meant to be kind of like getting the knowledge and kind of like add value to the society and things like that. Because when they does that thing, they would understand what kind of like loophole in the society and how do we supposed to fix it, that thing. So yeah, this is what it is. So people have different thought process, not meant to be kind of like cracking the exam, but kind of like add some sort of value to the society and things like that. And even if they didn't crack the kind of like UPSC and things like that, still they would kind of like add some sort of value to the society because of the knowledge that they are getting. So it is really good, na dude. I don't know why, but sometimes I just kind of like somebody in the zone of kind of like talking, I'm just kind of like talking stuff and stuff like that. I don't know why, but when I'm kind of like seeing these particular things, I'm just I don't know why. I'm trying to understanding this stuff and this stuff and this stuff and this stuff and this stuff, and kind of like I'm gonna figure it out. I kind of like do the simulation inside of my mind that what if this happened and this would be happen and this happened and this would be happen. What if I would kind of like do this thing and probably that. I don't know. Just lot of things actually happen. That's why I'm kind of like a mind is really fucked up sometimes. Okay, yeah. So that's why I'm kind of like watching some of the content and things. So that I would kind of like my mind was not busy in kind of like a thinking about stupid stuff. And it's not stupid stuff, by the way, but kind of like somebody is this thing that I just can't stop my thinking when this thing actually happened and stuff is like that. Whatever. It's been almost like a 49-minute. I have to stop myself. All right, this is it, and thank you.